Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're really getting into something quite interesting, Gemini 2.5 Flash Experimental. It's a new language model from Google DeepMind that's, well, making some waves.
That's right. And our goal here for you listening is to break down what this model is all about. We want to understand its key aspects, its potential impact.
Exactly.
We're basing this on a pretty detailed academic analysis, trying to really see what makes it stand out.
Precisely. So our mission is to give you a clear picture, cutting through maybe some of the heavier technical stuff. The core idea with Gemini 2.5 Flash, it seems, is finding the sweet spot, balancing speed, cost, and its reasoning power.
Yeah, aiming for something more versatile.
Could lead to a much more adaptable AI. So, okay, let's maybe start with some context first. Where does this fit in?
Well, understanding the background is pretty important. We've definitely seen this trend, haven't we? Moving from these massive resource-hungry models towards lighter, more accessible versions. So Gemini 2.5 Flash, announced back in April 2025, feels like an experimental but really innovative step in that direction.
Responding to that need for AI tools that are fast, affordable, but still smart.
Exactly. Quick, affordable, and adaptable. That seems to be the mantra.
And looking at the analysis we have, Google DeepMind strategy seems clear. Broaden access to these powerful tools. How are they planning to do that specifically?
The key really seems to be tackling the cost. They're aiming for a significant drop in the computational expense, the processing power needed.
Without losing the quality of the answers too much.
That's the goal, yeah, not sacrificing response quality. And this model, it directly addresses some common hurdles we see with the current big language models.
Okay, so what specific limitations are we talking about? Because, I mean, these large models are already doing some pretty amazing things.
Oh, they absolutely are, no question. But getting them widely adopted, that's often tricky because of, well, first, the sheer computational cost.
Right, running them isn't cheap.
Not at all. Then there's latency, how long it takes to actually get a response back.
Which matters a lot for real-time applications.
Hugely. And finally, you often need pretty specialized heavy-duty infrastructure to run them effectively. Gemini 2.5 Flash seems designed to hit these points head-on, focusing heavily on efficiency.
Efficiency, okay. That actually brings us to something I found really fascinating in the analysis. This concept they call the thought budget. Can you unpack that a bit?
Yeah, that's possibly the core innovation here, or at least a really interesting one. This thought budget, it basically lets developers control how much thinking or reasoning the model does for any given response.
So you can dial it up or down?
Precisely.
Yeah.
Imagine being able to fine-tune the AI's cognitive effort, depending on how complex the task is.
Wow, okay. That sounds incredibly flexible. So how does that actually play out? What does that flexibility mean in practice?
It means it can adapt to different levels of, let's call it, cognitive demand. For something simple, maybe just pulling out a quick fact,
Yeah.
you use a small budget.
Making it faster and cheaper.
Exactly. But for a task that needs more analysis, more complex reasoning, you can allocate a bigger thought budget.
I see, I see. So how does this adjustable reasoning show up in the technical specs? What are the hard numbers or features?
Okay, so feature number one is definitely that adjustable reasoning we just talked about. Feature two is a really interesting cost structure that scales with it.
Ah, the pricing.
Right, so processing without activating the complex reasoning costs about 0.6 cents per million tokens.
Okay.
But if you turn on that deeper reasoning, it jumps to 3.58 per million tokens. And just to clarify for everyone, a token is basically a piece of a word or a character that the model processes.
That's quite a difference in price. But makes sense if you can choose when you need the extra power. What else stands out technically?
Well, it's also designed for high inference speed.
Fast response times.
Very fast, which makes it suitable for, real-time interactions, chatbots, things like that. And finally, something pretty impressive is its context capacity.
How much information it can handle at once.
Exactly. It can apparently process up to 1 million tokens in a single go.
1 million?
Yeah.
That's a lot. That opens up some serious possibilities, right?
It really does. Think about feeding it massive legal documents to summarize, or analyzing years of financial reports in one interaction, maintaining context throughout.
Yeah, processing huge amounts of text like that. Fields like law, medicine, finance, that could be game-changing.
Absolutely. Or even just having a much longer, more coherent conversation with an AI.
Okay, so with this adjustable reasoning speed and large context window, what kind of applications could really benefit from this model?
Its versatility is probably its biggest selling point. You could easily imagine Virtual assistants giving super quick answers.
Like instant customer service responses?
Right. Or think about education systems giving real-time feedback on student work.
Mm-hmm.
Business automation, too, making simple decisions immediately, without delay. And as we mentioned, handling those large volumes of text in specialized fields.
Like that education example, a tutoring system that doesn't pause for ages but gives targeted feedback right away.
Exactly. It's that immediacy combined with just enough intelligence for the task.
So it's not necessarily about being the most powerful model overall, but the right amount of power for the job.
Yeah.
How does it stack up against, say, its sibling, Gemini 2.5 Pro?
Yeah, that's a really important distinction to make. Gemini 2.5 Pro, that's engineered for the really deep, complex reasoning tasks, heavy lifting.
Okay.
Gemini 2.5 Flash, on the other hand, its priorities are different. It's all about low latency speed and being economical.
So it covers those situations where you don't actually need the full power, the full cost of a top-tier LLM?
Precisely. It's offering a more efficient tool in terms of both speed and cost for a whole range of use cases. It's like, you don't need a sledgehammer to hang a picture frame.
Right, using the right tool for the job. That makes sense. Which I guess leads us nicely into the strategic thinking behind this. Why did Google DeepMind develop this experimental model? What were their main goals?
Well, looking at the analysis, there seem to be a few key objectives. First, pretty clearly, is offering a cheaper way for companies and developers to start using generative AI.
Lowering the barrier to entry.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Second, as we've talked about quite a bit, introducing this novel idea of scalable reasoning intelligence you can adjust. Third, improving efficiency, specifically for those situations where speed is absolutely critical without the quality dropping off a cliff.
Keeping the basic response quality decent.
Right. And finally, the goal seems to be creating an AI model that's just more adaptable, more customizable for everyone involved, developers building with it, and maybe even end users interacting with it eventually.
So fundamentally, Gemini 2.5 Flash sounds like a really interesting move towards maybe democratizing AI, making it more accessible, more efficient across the board.
I think that's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
Its real significance seems to be in that blend, the adjustable thinking, the speed, the cost effectiveness. Is proposing a different way to think about using AI.
Taking a wider view then, thinking academically or professionally, what's the biggest takeaway here? What's the real importance of this development?
For me, it really highlights this convergence we're seeing, a convergence of efficiency in how resources are used, adaptability to very specific needs, and accessibility, making these tools available more widely.
So it points towards the future design of AI.
It certainly feels like a step in that direction. And because it's experimental, we get to watch how these ideas actually play out.
Right. Well, to wrap up our deep dive today, it leaves us with a really interesting thought, doesn't it? This idea of scalable reasoning. If we can really fine-tune the cognitive effort of AI models, how might that change how we interact with them, how we deploy them in the future?
Yeah, that ability to dial the thinking up or down. The implications are potentially huge.
Definitely something for all of us to think about. Thank you for joining us for this analysis.